Hello and welcome to the Tournament Poker Project. From Essex, I'm Jon.
And I'm Tain.
And we are on our poker journey to poker greatness. This is our regular hand analysis podcast. And it's all about learning and getting better at poker so we get good enough to go and play and compete in the World Series of Poker. And competing to a level where we feel like we could actually win some big bucks, right?
Yeah, mop the floor of them.
Not the floor.
Show them how to play poker. Show them we're not scared about going out first hand of day one, even though the truth is we're really scared of going out first hand.
No, I'm not anymore. I don't care. If I get aces, I'm going all in. Fuck it.
You're going to be that guy. I'm going to be that guy that openly folds my aces on that first day and just go, ha ha, guys, someone's having me on. And then the person turns over like 7-2 off. And I could have doubled up.
Definitely.
I'll cry.
I mean, they're not going to be beating aces. But anyway, so we're going to be analysing hands, right? And just for our listeners, we're not professionals. Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
As such, anything we say, we're talking about concepts and ideas. It's not necessarily 100% be all and end all. It's not necessarily definitely GTO. Even if we say we think GTO would do this, we might get it wrong, is what we're saying. If you've got any comments, please do leave them in the chat.
Yeah, join us on our journey. Don't try to achieve what we're achieving because of the things we're saying. Simply because we're learning different things at different times to the listeners.
Learn with us. Learn.
Yes, tell us where we're going wrong rather than write everything down, study it, rewind, re-listen, and then cry when you make the same mistakes that we make.
Join us. Join our journey. What have you been up to, Tain?
Playing a hell of a lot more online.
Yeah.
Enjoying getting deep sometimes. And then having a bit of a bad variance run, and then going deep again, and then having a variance run. But I think we mentioned off air just how the extra volume does really help. You start getting used to playing. You start getting used to going out after 3-4 hours of hard work. You start getting used to the variance and not being able to, and not taking the bad beats so bad, and not getting too carried away with good results. I had a couple of bink wing. Well, they're not binks; they're just good quality wins. But I had a couple in short space of time, so my bankroll went up. So I'm playing very slightly higher level. But since then, it's just been stagnating a bit.
So is it fair to say you're being quite serious about your bankroll and how many buy-ins you need in your bankroll to enter certain buy-ins of tournament, right?
Yes, I have I basically loaded up GG and ACR, and if I want to play in a $10, $20, $30 tournament, which I can easily afford out of my own personal, bankroll, if you want to call it that, it's basically my salary. That's where I'll put the money, so I can take pop shots if I want there.
Mm-hmm.
But my bankroll on stars is I strictly play within that. So if I'm playing a $3 tournament, I have to have $300 in my bankroll or thereabouts, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm doing more the just playing tournaments that are way too big for my bankroll. I'm playing like $33 tournaments, and my bankroll's at $280, so it's quite a way out. But I'm just feeling comfortable playing them, and same as what you're saying there is, I'm understanding that a really big win on one of those, I'm probably going to draw some out and put it back into my personal savings. Although I say that, I reckon even if I won $3,000, I'd be tempted to just leave it in stars and that just be my bankroll and just almost like fund. It's almost like funding my poker with my work salary and waiting for that bink. And then when I get it, it's like, right now, that's my bankroll. that's probably how people lose all their life savings, isn't it? But I'm happy enough. I think playing the bigger buy-ins for me has been about trying to tell myself and teach myself that it doesn't matter. Like if you can break through the fact that it's a bigger buy-in and there's bigger wins, and not worry about just getting far or just making a cash. Yeah, it's just been about that, and I've done that, and I feel like I can play those now and just play properly. And if I go out on hand number 3, then so be it. I'll take another bullet. It's all good. And so far, I'm certainly not losing, any significant amount of my salary at all. In fact, I still haven't topped up stars for, it must be a couple of months now.
Nice. One of the things I keep trying to revisit. I think we said it in a really early lesson, early episode. Sorry, not early lesson, early episode
Oh,
where
it is a lesson as well.
it is a lesson. Quite right. So was if I won big, if I had a big bink. Some of these tournaments we've played in recently, where I run deep, top prize is 6-10 grand. Where when you're playing with a bankroll that's 5% of that, do I really want to put all that money into a bankroll and play at a higher level? Because surely, if I'm not ready for that, I'm just going to burn, like absolutely destroy what is at, quite a lot of money, and it's quite a lot of money in my real life. Forget poker, but more and more as we play, especially more and more as we play at slightly higher levels, we play slightly better players. We're not finding it daunting. We say quite often to each other that when we've made mistakes, we know we've made the mistakes, rather than we've played against someone who's doing stuff to us, like we've got our cards turned over. That never happens. I can see them players making mistakes, but my struggle is that I can't adjust to it. So now I'm wondering, if we do suddenly land 5 grand in each of our accounts, maybe we can just get straight on into the $50 or $100 tournament,
Maybe
because
we
that's
can.
our level.
Maybe it is, and I actually believe it. I mean, what I've noticed in these $33 ones, and I did play a 55 the other day as well, which was just because I couldn't find a 33. But I cashed in that as well, and it was pretty much not far past the min cash. I think I won $95 back. But all I've really noticed is that people 3-bet more. Like, you can't get away with like open limping, or you've got to be prepared to play back at 3-betters and look at who's doing what, who's doing too much 3-betting, who's not doing enough. And I feel like we've spoke about this a fair bit, and as long as you're kind of understanding their frequencies, or like taking note of their frequencies, it doesn't daunt me anymore. I'm ready for it. Let's go. You want to 3-bet me? I'll 4-bet you.
Exactly. And we might actually talk about that, even though the hands that I'm looking to share doesn't have any free betting in. Something that, again, we've spoke about, that I've just started learning, and I haven't got my mind into it properly, but I'll talk through it so we can kind of see where I'm at, in that someone's free bet statistic, where they are free betting too much, should have an implication on a different part of the game tree, which is what we're going to play into. And is that a professional attitude towards poker? We're seeing a mistake from a player, but we're not thinking, how do we react to that mistake? We're saying, you keep doing that mistake, I'm going to do something else at a different part of the game that you're going to be completely unaware of. But we'll talk about that. We'll get into it.
Okay. All right. Well, should we jump in?
I'm good to smash it off. Do you want to talk through the hands, and then
Yeah.
I'll?
So this is a hand that Tain played. I'll go through the mechanics of it, and Tain, you just add your insight as we go. So it's an 8-handed tournament, $3 on Poker Stars. We are sitting in the low jack, and what happens? Could you click us through?
Cool. Just a quick note: it's a bounty tournament.
Oh, it's a bounty, yeah.
So
So we're half the buy, and the 150 goes as bounties, and then the other 150 goes towards the prize pot.
yeah, so it doesn't matter too much, other than if I cover the player that I go heads up against, it gives me a lot more incentive to play a bit wider and chase a bit deeper, because there's a double incentive if I do knock that player out.
Okay. So
So
it folds around to us in the low jack, and we look down at King of Spades, Jack of Spades. Well, this is an open all day long. The blinds, which I forgot to mention, are 175 and 350, and there is an ante. So the pot before any voluntary action is at 925, and our stack is currently at just over 14k. So we've got about 15m. So relatively deep. Even if it wasn't deep, this is an open all day long. How much we open, considering the other stack sizes behind us, which are roughly the same as us, or there's a couple of people on near a half of what we've got. Apart from the big blind, who does have a much bigger stack, he's sitting at 52k. So to me, this is, min click or just over a min click. So 720ish would be pretty good.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, this is my standard raise at this point anyway, but the big blind being so deep, so massive, they've got, what is that, 3 times everyone at the table.
Mm.
I don't want to be committing too many chips against that player. Out of I
What
would have
if he free
position, so
bets?
that position is going to be so much more valuable, because they're going to be playing even wider from the big blind if that's who the villain turns out to be. But it means that I wouldn't be trying to inflate the pot thinking I've got a great hand at this stage. It would be a very cautious bet. See what happens. I do have a little worry. The reason I'm elaborating on that is that with these bounty tournaments, sometimes if you do a small raise, like my standard raise is just over 2 big blinds, you get like four or five calls. And as to be fair, King Jack suited is one of the much better hands for that kind of thing. But when it happens to Ace 10 off, you're kind of like, you have a big sigh, and it's like, oh, well, let's play this hand very passively, because people will chase you down, and it's too difficult multi-way. But anyway,
Well,
we
look,
have that race.
just on that, I'm looking ahead a little bit. If we do get three bet by the big blind, he's going to be putting in probably what 2,200 or something, 2,000, 3 times our bet anyway. And then we can call that. The pot would then be somewhere in the region of 5k, and we would have an SPR of about 2.5 going to the flop. So it would certainly make the flop quite easy to play, but I say easy to play. It would be easy to play if we hit a king or a jack. You'd probably just go with it. But yeah, it is a bit different when it comes to three betting. Although your SPR's low, what's this guy three betting with? He's going to have a lot of kings and jacks in his range as well, and he also might have things like queen, king, queen, ace, king, ace, queen. So he might have our kings and jacks dominated, which I don't know. I don't know if we need to worry about that. Have you got any reads on this? You know what? Before we go into that, I don't even know if the big blind's going to be three betting.
Well,
Let's not confuse it. I was just trying to preempt uh, how it might go and what we might be doing on the flop, but I may be getting a little bit ahead of myself there.
no, of course. I mean, that is kind of my fault for leading us down that path, which was basically that my standard raise is about 2.1 big blinds.
Yeah,
However, in certain situations or with certain hands, I will deviate from that, especially if I feel that the table is not paying any attention to bet size. So if I get aces and I bet 10 big blinds, I still think people would react in pretty much the same way they'd if I bet 5 big blinds. So they're what is that, inelastic to my bets.
yeah,
So I do that, especially in times when I do want fewer callers. I don't mind having a call, but if I'm a bit earlier, I might take a bit of a risk and raise it a bit bigger. But I wouldn't do that with the big blind. But then I've led us down that path, and the big blind's not in the hand. So apologies to go on astray, but it's important because it also reverts back to what does happen. So
okay,
you want to pick
fine.
it back up?
So, all right, just to recap then, it folds to us in the low jack. We open to just over the minimum with king jack of spades. Then it folds, the hijack folds, the cutoff folds, the button flat calls, and then the blinds fold. Okay, so the button, so the villain now, this as we go heads up against to the flop with this villain, he's got 8,000 left in his stack. We cover him with 13,500. And the pot going to the flop is at just under 2,400. So an effective, like we're going with the effective stack there, which is the villain. We've got an SPR of about 3.2, 3.3 or something. So just over your, ideal 0 to 3, which is a bit easier to play. But still a low enough SPR to make this hopefully relatively simple.
Cool.
Um,
So before we hit the flop, so we've raised from the low jack, and we've got a call from the button. The one thing that was really important at this stage, which I've not started implementing it, but I'm trying to understand it, is that this villain had what I would consider an exceptionally high big blind free bet range. So their stats are voluntary put into the pot 32%, which is about right. Not too bad for a bounty tournament when people like a bit of action.
mhm.
They're the when they enter the pot, they do so as the razor 21% of the time, which is about right. That's probably where my stats are, to be
So
honest.
20% of the times that they enter the pot is an open. So that means 80% of the time they're calling, right?
Yes. So they've entered out of 69 opportunities, 22 of them they've been in the pot, but 14 of them they've been the razor. So the others is probably where they're the big blinds and people call into them, so they've got
Yeah.
a check for free,
Yeah.
um, or that they've called behind like they have in this situation. But it's still fairly standard, so they're not calling behind often. But this is the killer. Their free bet stat is what I would consider very high, 24%. So that free bet
Okay.
is telling me they are free betting way too wide. Now, what
Okay.
I'm trying to get my head into is that that's irrelevant, really. If I enter a free bet pot with them, I can consider that they're going to be doing that a bit wider, and that I can probably, if I play a tighter range, or if I play my normal range, I am going to be even more ahead than I normally would. So I could probably afford to bet a bit more often. But what's really important is situations like this where he's just called behind. Because if he's free betting too much, he's got a choice of two things. He's either promoting calling hands to free betting hands, which
Hmm.
means his calling range is really weak, especially as his calling stat is fairly standard. So he's basically promoting far too many hands. So his calling range is now unusually weak,
Yeah.
or he's taking stuff from the very bottom of his range and he's having too many bluffs in his free bet range. So
And
his
what's
calling range
that
might.
calling range though?
So yeah, so he can't have enough strong hands in his calling range. He might try and throw in like aces or kings into the calling range, but he would be losing a lot of value with them good strong hands by doing so. So even though that might offer a bit of balance, he'd be losing a lot of value from what are his strongest hands. So it depends what way he's looking to get around this. But my personal feeling is his calling range is a lot weaker.
Okay.
So it won't be as ace heavy as it should be, perhaps, and things like that. So that's the only thing that I
And
was
and the
thinking, like,
only way
okay,
to determine, I guess, between the two, whether he's promoting calling hands too much or he's got too many bluffs in his free bet range, is to see what happens at showdown and start seeing, when you get a peek at, right, we know he three bet on that hand, what happened at the end. Then you can
yeah,
start to see, is it more often than not he's showing up with, lots of kind of more bluffy three bet hands, or is he showing up with, you know 10 queen suited, when he's three bet, in which case he's promoting calling hands a bit too much. Okay, so without that information, I suppose we don't know if it's one or the other. But if you've got a bit of a read that says it's likely to be he's promoting calling hands into his free betting range, then yeah, he's got an overly weak calling range and he's just called, so it's ideal, isn't it?
yeah, and I'm aware that it's a $3 tournament. So if you are a reg or a pro, even if this offers a really decent top prize, or you're just playing this as a side game or something, this is in my honest opinion just way too low. I can't see people giving the time to this,
Yeah.
especially at the time I was playing. There's so many other good quality games on plenty of sites.
Okay.
So having that proper balance, and if you are going to extend your free betting range, doing so in a really nice mixed way that makes it incredibly difficult to make the exploit obvious, I just can't see it being this player. It'll be what I would consider the really easy option, which is you just start free betting all your aces and then you move backwards from there. Maybe
And maybe that works.
that's my
Maybe
feeling.
that works for him if he's used to playing these smaller buy-in tournaments, and people generally overfold to free bets a bit too much, or call them and then just fold on the flop. Maybe he's just had a lot of kind of success in three betting too much, and he thinks this is great. So more for him because he's now playing the Tain. So
Exactly.
the
Hopefully.
flop comes.
So
Sorry, mate, go on.
I was just going to say, so the rest of the hand, I think, plays out fairly straightforward in terms of special considerations and balancing this, balancing that. But that is something that plays at the back of my mind, because as you will see on the flop, there is a part of it that's significant. If I stop interrupting and let you tell everyone what the flop is.
So the flop comes four of hearts, ace of clubs, nine of spades. So four, ace, nine, rainbow. We've got one spade there, so we've got the backdoor flush. We've got a backdoor straight. Got a couple of backdoor straights. So the action's on us. What are we doing here?
So as the pre-flop raiser, I'm putting the ace as a good part of my range. I feel that I should be leading on this quite a significant amount of the time, if not range. I have, because I got a call from the button, I should normally do I'd imagine a small bet. If it's going to be a range bet, I can't. There are going to be plenty of times that they're going to have a decent ace. This is where I was trying to wonder if
But is he going to
actually,
if he free bets too much? He's probably not got any decent aces, has he?
yeah. So this is exactly the review part of it. Is this the area where my standard move, and it's not going to be a spoiler, my standard bet is third pot. I think that is almost
Yeah, just done. Oh,
deliciously
yeah.
exact. But should this be a bit bigger? They've got an unusually weaker calling range. Should I bet bigger, or do I want to? Is this good enough as a bluff in that position? If I'm going to bet bigger, should I have more checks? Because I don't need as many bluffs, and the bluffs need to be a little bit better than king high with
Yeah,
backdoors. Does that
I
make
don't
sense?
know. Yeah, I don't know what the right thing is to do. I'm not sure I would actually bet here. Um, I don't know what I'm hoping to happen just yet. But if he has got an ace, well, no, I suppose we're saying he's not got many aces. So are we just trying to get him off of this then? Are we just trying to, are we hoping that this bluff's got a lot of fold equity? Because it's not a very high equity bluff. Like, yeah, there's a backdoor flush and there's some backdoor straights, but we've not got a flush draw or a straight draw at the moment. There's an ace on the board already, so if we hit a king, we could still be behind, even if a king or jack comes on the turn.
Honestly, I'm playing it as a value hand.
Okay.
Genuinely, I'm looking at that, and if I've established that they've not got an ace, or that they will make it known to me that they've got an ace in one way or another, I'm probably playing with the best hands, bar a 9 or a 4, which isn't they're not overly good hands to hit, and they're also going to be quite naked. So
Sure.
even if they are calling this bet, if I pick up some equity on the next card, I can keep barreling that, because a Jack 9 or King 4 or something like that, they're really going to struggle to keep cooling down if something comes along that makes it even harder for them to be calling these bets that are improving my draws. If a spade comes, or one of the straight card comes, that's going to get scarier and scarier. So I'm seeing this as a value hand that has a lot of equity over them 9 and 4 cards.
Okay. Yeah, and I
So
suppose
there is a risk that I'm playing an ace,
you've
but if I'm putting them on
if
the
you are if you're ruling out an ace, I suppose you've got two overcards to anything they might hold. So yeah, fine, okay. So it's in that sense, it's got some equity. All right, so you bet
So
719 into
we do the
2395, and the villain flat calls.
course.
Okay, so we
So
go to a turn.
does that, just a quick one, like would the villain be raising here with an ace? How
Um,
happy are they? If we imagine that they've not got aces, they've not got ace king, they've not got ace queen, they've not got ace jack, they've probably not got ace 10. I don't even put them on ace 9. So the best hand they might have got here with is fours and ace 4. And if they're really promoting cards, there is a potential 4-9 suited. Um, but they're
wow.
the only hands, and there's
I
not
mean,
many of
four
them.
nine suited.
Against the wider range.
No.
Sorry?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
No, I see what you're saying. Go for it. All right.
so that
What does
call
someone
is quite weak, in my opinion. Um, but then that might be because most of their calls are quite weak. So anyway, they do call.
do? Cool. The turn comes, the absolute dream card, the 10 of spades. So we now have our flush draw, and we also have proper gut shot um, as well. So we're looking for the
Yeah,
queen. Um,
yeah. We actually got
that's
straight
pretty.
flush gut
That's
shot.
pretty, and the straight flush gut shot as well. Yeah. So we've got the straight flush draw. We've got a flush draw. We've got a gut shot straight draw. We are, yeah, we're liking this card, right? This is very good for our range. Or is it good for our range, or is it just very good for our cards? It's probably good for the villain's range as well. It's just good for our particular holding, I think.
Yes, I feel that given the exact type of hands we're putting the villain on, I'd say that is better for the villain because I feel that they would be calling with a lot more draws than they should be, and things like 9-10 and 10, maybe even 10-4, are firmly in their range and they're nowhere to be seen in my range. Well, 9-10 would be suited, I guess, but there's only 4 combos of the suited, and 9-10 off isn't in my opening range. Whether it should be or not, I don't know. Um, so, I mean, ace 10 is in my range as an open, so I've still got benefits on that. But I do feel that in terms of straights, they've probably got both ends of that in their range, and I don't. I've only got the upper part, king jack, queen jack. But then I've also got many more made hands that are already beating anyone who's just picked up equity with that 10. So even if they've got 9-10 and they've just hit 2 pair, I could easily have ace 10. I could still have aces, 10s, 9s as well. So there's that to consider. So it's a
Even,
mixed card.
even fours, just about. And you do have 10-9 suited in your range. It's an open
Yeah.
from the logo.
But again, it's for me, this is an exceptionally good card to bluff at because I've just got so much equity that if I win right now, I've won with king high and I'm happy with that. And if I get called, I get to see another card and I might turn even more equity. And I'm really looking to put a lot of pressure on their 4s and 9s that made the call here, but it is hugely reliant on just assuming that they're not going to have as many aces as they should do at this point. And I'm still quietly confident on that. And I'm happy to lose some money to a ace three, for instance. Okay.
You know what? I'm in complete agreement. I think you're right. I think let's bet this. So you go quite
So this,
small with the bet, 1150.
yeah, that's my mistake. I
Yeah.
also feel that that weren't good.
It feels like maybe something like 2800, something as big as that
Mm.
would be better, like two-thirds pot or three-quarter pot.
Yeah,
Um,
really, really applying pressure. And I do feel that there might have been an element of hesitation of, I'm going to bet this to give them the opportunity to raise me because people just play so straightforward when they do that. It's that's a I've got the ace. Thank you for continuing to inflate the plot. Um, Although their SPR now is down to, if they call this bet, they'll have exactly a 1 SPR, I think. So it's not like they're going to struggle to get all the money in if they've got an ace, or even better than that now. Anyway, but I think the bet's too small, but I do that bet.
So just to recap, that was a pot of 3,800, and you bet 1,150 into that. So it's about just somewhere between a third and a quarter pot. And then the villain, then again, just calls.
Just calls.
Just calling all the way along. And we go to a river. And now the pot, I think it's worth saying, is about 6,000, and there's about 6,000 left in the effective stack of the villain. The river comes ace of hearts. So the flush doesn't get there. None of the straights get there. The straight flush obviously doesn't get there. Now what? Is this a free barreler? Do we apply maximum pressure on his tournament life?
At this point, for me, seeing that ace, that was literally like they've just lost a whole bunch of their combos. That is straight. What is that? About a third of their range has just disappeared of what was already an unlikely holding, in my opinion. So I just thought that I see that ace on the river as a blocker to to them having an ace, rather than they've just hit trips, because they're beating me anyway if they've got that. I feel that they would have done more earlier, especially as they can't take my bounty, but they're chasing chips. It's if they want to get it in while they got the best of it anyway. And if someone's betting at you, like, don't wait for the river to what could have been a straight flush and just get your money in. But anyway, yeah. I was really confident, and I basically bet in a way that I would bet if I'd have just hit that ace. If I already had an ace and I'm milking them for value, I am betting small and hoping that one of the rags comes along for the ride. And maybe that's a mistake. Maybe I should have really polarized.
So for our listeners then, so Tain bets now just under a third pot on the river. So this looks like you're going for value here, right? Not max value. It looks like, please call me. It's like you're begging him to call you. So it is now putting some pressure on, if he's holding a 9 or a 4, he's come along. My only concern with that is if he's got a 9, he's probably gonna call it, because it's just that little bit too low. It's even if it's a crying call for him, he's thinking, damn it, like, I'm probably behind. You've given him quite good pot odds to just call it and see. I mean, it would really dent his stack, but he's already dented his stack by putting 4K in or 3K in.
So, like, one of the things I'm thinking here is that they've not played like they've got a decent pocket pair, because I also feel that they've capped them well out of their range. And the flop, they needed to have picked up a 9 or a 4 if they've not hit the ace. And now, because if they got the ace, I think that's an irrelevant part. I mean, this bet was never looking at their ace, because we're losing to it no matter what we do. So every other part of their range that I feel would have got here are either misdraws, which are going to fold because they've got no showdown value, in my opinion, or a 4 or a 9. Because I can't see what would be calling over there. Well, there might be straight draws that call with the 10 and then hit the 10. Something like Jack 10, Queen 10, King 10, something like that. I still think that's a bit unlikely, because the ace and the 9 and the 4 are all quite disconnected. So that's a bit ropey. But I just think if you got a 4, if you got a 9, how can you possibly call 3 streets of bets? Again, even if you feel that, like, you'd need to be so sure that I've got 3 streets of bluffs, considering I opened from early position and then I've not relented. Like, I haven't bet massive to try to push anyone off a pot. I've just milked. So you have, even though you might think, I've got a pair, it's got showdown value, the truth is that you kind of haven't, because I don't even need an ace to beat a 9 or a 4, because I'd play this way with kings, queens, jacks, tens. Yeah, I'd play this way with sets. So you your showdown value could be so far down. You're so dead to this hand, to so many possible combos of what I could be betting with, that what's the point? What showdown value do you think you have if you've hit that 4? Surely you must turn it into a bluff or just give up.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was my reasoning. I would always bet small. I'd either bet small or I would jam in this situation. And I was so sure they've not got an ace that I didn't see the point in risking chips on what was, I don't know, maybe a 70% sure decision, because I was never certain, but 70% is pretty good for incomplete information. So
Okay.
I was never jamming. It's just no need, because I feel that a small bet should have been enough over this many streets. But anyway,
Okay.
do you want to see what happens?
Yeah. So let's have a look. So just to recap, Tain's just bet on the river with king high, just under a third of the pot, and the villain. Drum roll, please. He flat calls. Oh dear, I don't really want to see that. I mean, he's not doing it with queen high, is he?
What do you think are in the villain's call range? 3 streets, call.
I think he's gone all the way with a hand like queen nine or king nine, maybe even 8-9. I mean, if he's promoted too many calling hands to his 3-bet range, then he could have 7-9. I think he's got a 9
Cool.
anyway. 10 jack of clubs
Didn't
is what the villain turns over. So he's obviously beat you here. He's got the 10.
he does? I was
I
I
think it
was
was
livid.
probably. I think by the river he had to call.
Yeah.
Let's go back then to the flop. I mean, for
No.
as a call on the button, I don't hate it. I don't know if GTO says you're supposed to do it, but pre-flop he's got 10 jack suited, and yeah, pre-flop. I mean, it's something I might call with. Just thinking, yeah, I might, it's a, I want to see a flop.
Now, everything past the flop, even, and this is another thing, like Jack 10 is a mighty fine 3-bet hand. So there is a lot to consider. Where is that what they're doing? They're all the raw equity hands like aces and good quality kings are now their 3-bet hands. So things like Jack 10 is what they're playing as their calling range, mixed in with some of the other trash. But it's the flop action that left me like, oh, cannot believe that happens. Like, it's that they're calling me with a hand that is dominated by every single part of my betting range in this position, in my opinion. Pretty much everything. They're either losing already because I've got a pocket pair or an ace, or even if I've got a 4 or a 9 or anything, like calling with Jack 10, then they could be drawing almost dead if I've got ace, if I've got ace 10 or ace jack or something. I mean, so often they're dominated that I can't possibly think what the call is there to achieve. They
Yeah,
can
well,
never be sure of.
he's got a backdoor flush. He's got a backdoor straight. I mean, he's got two. Yeah, he's got a backdoor straight. Yeah, I don't know. It's
But
frustrating.
then when we talk of double back doors, we talk of bets because they've got the advantage of fold equity. Double back doors aren't calls. You've got what equity are you protecting? The benefit of that is the opportunity to improve, so you can get an extra barrel, like I did. So I've got hand with both double back doors, but the reason that's beneficial is that when I do hit a lot of extra equity on the next tree, I can continue to apply pressure in the same way someone with an ace would, someone with a set would. So I'm getting additional value from other hands that can continue to improve to the nuts while also getting additional fold equity. Because at every stage I'm betting, if they fold, I'm happy to win that pot. But their calls have no equity doing that. Like they're calling on such a small part of the likelihood of hitting a back door. They need both cards to come in their favour
Well,
to do anything
the
with it.
difference is as well. If we maybe consider yours and the heroes and the villains' hand as similar in that they've just some backdoor possibilities. The big difference for me is you're the one betting, and so you've got fold equity as well to
Yeah.
increase the benefit of making a bet there. Whereas calling it, you've not got any fold equity at all. You're literally trying to hit, and you've got two undercards to the ace. You could hit one of those and then make it difficult for yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
like it would have been if you did actually have an ace, because he's ended up having to call with his 10. So yeah, it's tricky. I don't think he should have called. I think the villain should have folded, and then he got a bit lucky on the turn. But again, what if you did have the ace? He'd have lost a lot of chips there, quite unnecessarily.
Yeah. The other side is how often, as if we flipped the rolls around and you're on the button, and let's just say we've decided that calling in that spot with Jack 10 is a good move for whatever reason. How often do you get free streets of bets, albeit small, but free streets of bets where the river then pairs the ace? Do you feel that you're calling good? Like I was when I did that bet on the end and they called, I was like, oh, they've got the ace then. To then see that they haven't, that's the thing that really was like, oh, I really need to look to see if I've been obvious with my betting. Is this an obvious line for a bluff,
I don't think
or
it's obvious. I don't
this
think
is
it's obvious.
this is yeah, this villain's just calling anything and they're calling it down, open for the best, and getting lucky. Like that's the other side. Like they did win the hand. I don't know if that's a pat on the back or a
Yeah, it's
you
true.
got away thinking that you did good there, but you got extremely lucky. Um, I don't know, because I to the other people at the table, I might have looked at a total plonker, bet, and then get called down by a bluff catcher at best. Um, can you get this far with bluff
Sure.
catchers
Yeah, I don't. You
to
know
that
what? I'll be
level?
honest. I don't hate the villains play. I'm not sure I would have. I think by the time it got to the turn, I would have done exactly what the villain done and just called it down. I got
Yeah, I do agree with that.
down value. It's whether I would have called that flop bet or not is the crux of it. And to be honest, I'm not sure. I probably
Yeah,
wouldn't have. I'd have probably folded it. That's the difference.
or a check raise if you feel you got some back. Not check raise. If you got some double back doors plus fold equity, then put in a raise or raise when you hit your 10. There is something to be said that you popped into my mind while you're saying that, in that when there is an ace on the board, the hands with the least incentive to bet is kings and queens, because they are literally folding out all the hands they beat and only getting called by aces.
Mhm.
So unless I'm making egregious errors, he can easily eliminate them too. He blocks the jack. So by the time he hits his 10, the question he's asking is simply ace and bluff. And if he feels I have got a lot of bluffs at that point, then it's an easy call. He's calling much worse than Jack 10. But it is that river bet that's not the river bet, sorry. The flop. I'll get there eventually. That flop call. Um, Maybe it's some people feel that it's such a small bet
Yeah, I'm
they
trying
can
to
do
think
that kind of thing.
what would GTO would say about it, like one of the solvers, because if you're like you're gonna if you're calling pre-flop, what is what hands are you going to continue with? How strong do they need to be to continue? Especially if he's looked you up and he's seen you've if he's caught a couple of these types of bluff off you before.
Yeah. Well, that's something I've really been looking at that part of my game when I'm getting into the study. In that I am I get very good value. Like I seem to, when I hit a good hand, I do seem to
Yeah, and that comes
be
from
able to
being
get
very
people
active at
abroad.
the table, and I experience the same thing. I'm so active at the table, and it can mean I'm on a bit of a roller coaster, but I get paid when I've got a really good hand. People just can't fold to it. They just they've seen you do it too many times, or they feel like you're playing too many hands. So when you've got a really good one, you get all their chips.
Yeah,
It does work. It's better than not playing enough hands and then not getting paid for your aces. That's the way I see it. That's the worst thing, is sitting there slowly blinding out and then getting your chips in, and then everyone folds and you might win a few chips back. Poker's never going to work that way. You'll always end up missing out. And the idea is you play active enough, and yes, you're on a bit of a roller coaster, but if you're playing well with not so amazing cards, then you're going to be building a stack anyway, and then you also get paid for the really good cards. That's how you get a really big stack. That's proper poker, right?
yeah. So I'm just trying to see
See what
exactly what.
we're just having a look at the GTO. So
Yeah,
that's yeah.
was it button versus low jack? That's the one. Sorry. So what do you think? So this is all about the call and whether the Jack 10 does continue with double backdoors as a call. Ace 9 4 is the board. Drum roll. I've got a feeling that the call shouldn't be there. So I've bet 1.76, single raise pot, and the buttons, their calling range firmly has Jack 10 suited in.
Okay, so he should be calling it.
But the Jack 10, yeah, well, maybe that's something I need to learn then.
Jack 10 of clubs.
So they've
Yeah,
not decided to free bet it.
this is it. When he finds himself
They're
in a
raising.
position, regardless of what he's doing incorrectly pre-flop, when he gets there with it, it seems that GTO, for our listeners, we're just looking at what GTO would do here, and GTO would make the same call the villain made.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, in fairness to me, they've not got much of a raising range, and Jack 10 is in that raising range, but they're calling most of the time, and Jack 10 is part of that.
Yeah.
So, I need to pick up on
You
why
need
I was so
to,
confident about that.
you need to learn poker, Tate.
Um,
You obviously don't know anything about it.
God, what's the matter? But then with King Jack specifically, um, I'm mixing right across the board, and if I'm not going to check, then the bet that I did is the slightly more favoured bet.
Yeah.
But it is a very mixed. King
So,
Jack on that board is
so
solid.
so GTO is saying that the way Tain played was also correct, and that's not uncommon, is it? That two people are playing correctly, and one of them's got to win.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating, especially when you think you're absolutely sure of something,
Mm,
and you're not. On that next card, it's exactly the same play that I did. So GTO says my most significant move should be betting with my King Jack,
hmm
which you do. Small bet as well. Continues with small bet, and the button always calls with Jack 10 suited 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So that is always a call. And then we turn to the river, which was another ace, which did that pair the. Sorry, just checking the suit of that. If I can get that to work. Same as the four. Sorry about this, everyone. This is probably awful listening. But this is the kind of thing we're trying to use to improve our game and work out
Yeah.
why we
No, it's good.
why we felt so strongly about certain pots, only to then think, see, this is where we need node locking, John. Oh yeah, I didn't even think that. If we inflate their free betting range to give their calling range, I've got a feeling I should bet much bigger. So this is again trying to work out this part of the game tree. So if their calling range is much weaker because they've inflated all their good aces, for instance, to their free betting range, I can bet that flop big with range
Mm.
because so little of their range is going to re-raise me
Yeah, so maybe like
because they're not got the ace.
yeah, really got them off it kind of thing.
Yeah. So the reason that we only bet small so often is because we really don't want to get raised. Even if we feel that their range doesn't overly hit that, it's quite worrying when that does happen to us. But when we don't really have that fear, bet
Mm.
big, get all your chips in. You're going to get so many more folds from the hands that are beating you, and even when you get called, you've got tons of equity. And just to complete on the river, it's for me with my suited King Jack. It's the same again. It's probably most favoured, but it's almost a perfect split between checking and the small bet,
Hmm.
which is exactly what I did. So small bet, and then the button loads up their range with Jack 10. They just call 100% without any shadow
So
of a doubt, and that's exactly what they did. And
yeah,
then
I
they
mean it's
laugh at
it's
me.
it's two players playing correctly, um, in the most part. You know,
I
some
am really shocked at how GTO that hand was because I was livid. How dare you call that flop bet? Oh, I'd never put that at part of your
I
range.
think
Oh, I thought
you
he.
know what I think it is when we're thinking about the amount of time, especially if you've got a good bluff frequency, like 3 to 1 or whatever it is. It means that he needs to call the flop more. You kind of call the flop most, and then there's more folds on the turn, and then by the river, you obviously got more chance of folding again. So with that in mind, when you're on the flop, even if you've got something a bit less, full of equity, you call it that bit more, I think, don't you? You take it that there's a lot of bluffs still at that point, or there's more, and you call it. So I think that's what GTO is doing there. It's saying for the villain, yeah,
Yeah,
you need to be calling anything with any kind of equity. The fact that you might not have an ace, and then he's got two overcards to the 9 and a 4. Well, that's exactly the reason I suppose GTO is saying, yeah, you call it because you might not have that ace, and if you have got a 9, for instance, then he's still got two overcards, and then yeah, the turn comes, very lucky card for villain. He's then picked up a second pair, and the ace on the river kind of makes it less chance that you've actually got one, and it kind of makes it even more of a call. And GTO says that it says 100% call on the river.
yeah. In fact, that ace on the river has no bearing on the villain's value range because everything that they were losing to, they're still losing to. That ace didn't bring anything in that wasn't already part of their bluffing range. Like they'd need to bluff if that makes sense, which is never going to work. So I was never folding an ace before that. I'm never folding an ace after that. So they're playing a completely different part of my range the whole time. And as you said, that just removed combos from what I could possibly be holding. So yeah, it empowered them to do this call. But I do think that the turn and river calls were perfectly good for the villain. I just didn't ever thought like I would have been so much happier if they had an aces. I think that's where it's at, and I'm like, I feel like I was bluff catched um,
Yeah, yeah,
to a hand that I didn't even feel was in their bluff catching range. But there we go. I'm gonna go away and have another look at some of the hands just to see where we're at. But it's been good.
yeah.
Thought it's been really helpful.
Okay, yeah, that was a good
Loved it.
learning one. I think that's kind of. I think a lot of the hands we've done on recent episodes have been we're in a complete agreement. We feel really confident, and yes, we're right. We've worked it out. It's good to see one actually that's tested us a bit and has shown us something that is at odds with what we thought it was.
Yeah, as well as to see that GTO's looking at us and shaking its head because we're like, oh yeah, no, it should never be there, and we've got to learn why that's part of the game tree. As I said, we've dissected it, and I think we're on it, but we need to be able to pick this app, because if we were playing in Villains Park trying to play GTO, I don't think I've got that line. I don't think I've got that first call in me, and that's something I really need to pay attention to, because we're giving up huge value, huge equity if we're folding out hands like that, which we really
I
shouldn't
see
be.
it a lot, especially when I've been maybe a bit overactive at the table. People do start calling me down, and I get these situations a bit where I'm like, oh, what have you called that flop with? Like nothing, like two undercards to the ace, and I just think, what are you doing? But I guess it's part of it. If someone's bluffing at a good frequency, then you need to be calling those C bets with less than ideal cards.
Cool. Should we end it on whether we feel that Seek 4 was playing GTO, or if we feel that Seek 4 played loosey goosey and got lucky that they hit a good line?
I think. I don't think there's many hands you should be flat calling with on the button. Maybe Jack 10 suited is one. Actually, in all honesty, I can't answer your question. I don't really know what a button calling range is against a low Jack open when you've got the blinds after you. The big blind is an absolute monster stack. It doesn't feel like you should really be flat calling with much. Is it a 3-bet or fold? I don't know. Honestly don't know. This is a very weak part of my game. I don't often do that.
Well, just a quick.
I wouldn't often do it.
Well, you say that right here from a low Jack open, which is where we're at. The button calling range includes all the pairs. Literally every single pair is called, and the only hands it significantly misses out is both ace kings, which I'm assuming it either free bet or jammed, or that's what they're putting in to their strongest free betting range, as well as things like king queen, king jack. But yeah, they're getting this far with all the pretty much every suited ace except ace king, offsuit down to ace 10. A lot of the suited, they're doing suited nines up, so king 9, queen 9, jack 9 and better. A lot of the suited connectors, so they're getting there with a lot of hands. Jack 10 is like well firmly in their range. They're calling with a lot worse than that, and a lot more connectors than that, and they could have done with a queen 10 in that position, king 10, king queen.
Okay.
They would have got that
so
far with
he's
as well.
played it right. You've played it right. He's played it right, and it's just the way it's gone down.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, there is the big asterisk that
another world.
Yeah, their free betting stat was too high for this to be completely accurate. So I'd like to see what the actual implication of that would be. But that's for another time. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap it up, Tain?
No, I love it. There's a lot more that we've got to look at. We'll do that in the coming weeks.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for listening, everyone. And we'll see you again next time.
Cheers, everyone. Take it easy.